Okay.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. All right. So once your transport layer has done whatever it needs to, and what kind of information gets added at the transport layer?
Port number.
Port numbers, right? And that would be the
Yes.
source port and the destination port,
Yeah.
right? The source port meaning the port on which the sending application is listening on, and destination port meaning what kind of application you are sending it to. For example, if it's a HTTP, then you would be sending it to which port? Do you remember the port number? That
80.
is 80. And
Yeah, 18.
HTTPS
443.
443. SMTP,
25.
very good. POP3
110.
110. Okay. And FTP
2021.
2021. So there are some of these you have to remember off the top of your head. Luckily, it's only about 5 to 10 of them,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So you add the port information, both source and destination at this layer, and then you send your data down to your network layer.
Network layer.
Yeah. Now, data at network layer is called
Packets.
a packet, or recently it started being called a L3 PDU, layer 3 protocol data unit, right? Now, what is the function of the network layer? Any ideas?
Mm,
Well, other than the fact that I made my entire career mostly on layer 3. All right, 5 seems to have come in.
yes.
Morning, 5.
Hello. Sorry, sir.
No,
I was very.
there's no problem
I
because
had.
we were just revising last day's topics. We are just about to start the new topic.
Oh, okay.
So I guess
Okay. Thank you.
you're bang on time there.
Okay. Thank
Mm.
you.
But let's try to start at 6:30 to every day because I need to give you at least an hour and a half a day, right? So
Super.
let's try to, yeah.
No, no, no. Zoom check.
So the network layer or layer 3, the primary function. You guys with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. So the primary function there would be one is addressing. What do we mean by addressing? We know that every device on any network needs to have a unique address, right?
Yes.
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 Now,
IP address.
your addressing happens at this layer because your IP protocol runs at this layer, right? Second thing, path learning. Path learning means what? I mean, we start up our browser and say google.com. Hey, there's got to be somebody on, who knows how to get this packet to Google, right?
Yes.
Now, all the devices, the network infrastructure, meaning your routers on the way, somebody's got to learn the paths. Okay, to send it to Google, I need to send it through this link or through that link. That is the path learning part, and that happens at the network layer, right? So if we talk about it, um, How does that sound?
Google packet.
Global packet
Meaning,
deliver.
if your packet actually goes from your machine to the Google server and the reply comes from there, yeah, your network layer is concerned with that, and specifically your IP protocol. All right. So now, this particular topic, your IP addressing and subnetting, because there's also what we used to call supernetting, which nowadays we tend to call it summarization. This is the largest topic in single largest topic in TCP/IP, and I believe we are going to spend a couple of days on this, right? So, what do we know about the IP protocol itself?
Okay.
Hello,
Say again.
do we have an audio problem? Is everybody able to hear
No.
me clearly?
For me, it's okay.
Yes.
Yes, yes, sir.
What was the question, sir?
Now, what do we know about the IP protocol? Any ideas? Well, the full form at least.
Internet protocol.
Yes. Guys, I have an excuse for being slow, but you don't. Okay? I just woke up, so and I only had one cup of tea, right? So I can be excused for being a little low on voltage, but you can't, unless you're tired from your long day.
Yes.
You don't even have the excuse of age, guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So again, when we talk about the IP protocol, we are right now talking about IP version 4,
4.
right? Until the last chapter of this class, which where we address IP version 6, there is a full chapter dedicated to IP version 6. Until the time I start specifically saying IPv6, I mean IP version 4, the current version.
Okay.
All right. Anything that we remember about the IP protocol? Functions at what layer?
Network layer.
Yes, functions at layer 3 or the network layer, concerned with global packet delivery, all right,
Yeah.
or from between networks or across networks. About IP addressing, what do we know about IP addresses?
Yeah.
What is the
32
I think
bits.
I think there are 5 classes of IP.
yes, exactly. But before we go into the classes, what do we know about the address itself specifically? What is the length? I believe Swati was giving me the answer.
Yeah, it's 32 bit in length. It's a unique identity for a
Exactly.
particular computer.
It is 32 bits in length. How is it written? In what we call
Dotted.
a dotted
Decimal.
decimal format. Typically, what you would see is a 192.168.5.50, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's called the dotted decimal format, right? And each of these sections contains how many bits? Well, if we know that there are a total of 32 bits divided by 4 sections, that should be what?
8.
8.
8 bits, right? So each of this in 8 bits, each of the sections of 8 bits are separated by a dot, and we call this. So we have basically 4 Octets, right? Octa is 8, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What else do we know? Now we come to what I believe Faiz was saying, right? IP addresses are divided into how many classes? 5 classes,
Yes.
namely A through E, right? Do we know why we need IP addresses?
To identify
Exactly.
a device
On a network, basically, right? It's a unique
on network.
identifier that
Yes.
identifies. Now, IP
Yes.
address performs the same function as your address, including your name, your apartment ID, your building name, your street number, your I don't know, district, town, state, country, the whole thing, as you would have in a postal address. Your IP address contains all that information of how, where this machine is located, right? To which network it
Yes.
Yeah.
belongs, and what is the particular last number which identifies the machine, right? Let's look at the addresses itself. Now we know that an IP address consists of 32 bits, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now bits can be in how many positions? A bit can be in how many positions?
Mm.
There are typically only 2 positions to a bit, right? 0 and 1. Hey, the whole binary thing, right? A bit can be in only 2 positions, either on and off, which is either 0 or 1, right?
Yes. 0 or 1. Yes.
I believe you must have all have some binary conversion, binary to decimal conversion topics in your thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had.
So we know that a bit can only be in 2 positions, either 0 or 1, right?
1.
Everything gets represented by that. So if we say that we have 32 bits, right? And the starting position of IP addresses would be what, with every bit turned off, right? Meaning, is that how an IP address would start? Logically, right?
Yeah.
If you have 8
Yes.
bits and they can only be in 2 positions, then basically that's it. Everything turned off is how you start. And what would this get converted as in decimal? If I want to convert this binary number into a decimal, what would that convert to as? Nobody remembers this binary conversion anymore, huh?
No.
See, basically, 0 is 0. So if you have all zeros, that would mean a 0 there, right?
Yeah.
So we have 0.0.0.0, right?
Yes.
And what would be the other
Yes.
extreme position?
Well.
All ones.
All ones, right? So we have at the other extreme position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That would be the extreme position, right? With all of them being 1. Now, what would that convert to as in decimal? You remember your conversion chart?
Yes.
I quite understand that, yes. Yeah, I vaguely remember some bearded guy with spectacles.
Yeah.
I very much remember that part. So if I basically have all zeros, then all the positions would be 0. Anything that is 0, 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0, finally 0, right?
Yes.
Now, on the other hand, if all those were ones, then you would have a 128 plus, right?
Yes.
So what would that be? 128 plus 64 is 192, plus 32 is 224, plus 16 is 240, plus 8 is 248, plus 4 is 252,
2,
plus 2,
255.
255. So in which case the value here would be,
255.
right? So this is where your IP addresses start, IP version 4 addresses start from, and this is where it ends.
Yes.
Now tell me, between this all zeros and all ones, how many IP addresses do you think there are?
254.
Okay, try again. I mean, remember, there are 4 sections, each section capable of starting at 0 and ending in 255.
Yeah.
Come on, let me hear some more numbers.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. That's what we're trying to say here. See, the two ways of looking at it, we know that each bit can be in 2 positions.
Yes.
And how many bits? Total how many bits? 32?
8.
32.
32. Yeah.
So it would be 2 raised to 32, right?
Yes.
32.
Or another way of doing that would be each section, if you look at it, starting from 0 to 255 is 256, right? Inclusive of 0. So you're talking about 256
Yes.
into 256 into
Into
256 into
256. Into
256.
2. Yes.
So it is a lot. You mean, which means you have about 4.29 billion possible IP version 4 addresses. How does that sound? Like a lot?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what people thought in the late 70s and 80s. And you know what people think now? It's like, oh my God, we are running out of IP addresses. That's where we are today. We actually started running
Yes.
out of IP addresses in the mid 90s, which is where IP version 6 started getting developed. And the whole reason for IP v6 addresses is that we are practically run out of IP version 4 addresses. Which is why, quick note here, what do you think is IP version 6 number? How many bits does an IP version 6 address have?
I think 64.
No, it's actually 128 bits. So if you say that is
100.
2
Oh,
raised to
yes.
128. Now, if anybody wants to calculate that, please go ahead.
No.
Let's just now that is a large number. That is definitely a very large number.
Yeah.
Because when you're learning
Sir,
IP, yes, please.
hey, I was driving and I was connected to phone. I
Okay.
just got home. I just connected through laptop.
Yes.
I know this is really a good topic, and I really want to understand this one. So if it's like just the start, can you just please repeat it like for a minute, please?
Uh, there's nothing to worry about. We've probably been having a couple of jokes right now. We did not have anything major during this session. So,
Oh,
were you there for the starting and the ending? I mean, all IP addresses start at 0 and end at 255. Were you there for that part?
No.
Rather, what is on the screen now?
Yes, I see that.
So basically, all we were trying to say is that since bits can only be in two positions and we have 32 bits, your IP address starts with all the bits in the off position, which means all zeros, right? Which on conversion comes out to 0.0.0.0,
Yeah.
right? And the other extreme position would be all bits in the one position, which means all of them turned on, which means once you go ahead and do the conversion,
Mhm.
my pen is, which when you do a conversion, you end up getting 255,
Uh-huh.
right? So that would be the other extreme position. So what we were saying is in between all zeros and between all 255s, we end up having roughly about 4.29 billion IP addresses. That's what we were about. All right, so far, guys.
Yes.
Yes.
Now these IP addresses are divided, as I said in a few minutes back, into classes. Guys, you'll have to give me 1 second while I find a replacement battery for this. Let's see if it goes. All right. So your IP addresses are divided into classes. So namely, we have classes A, B, C. Used to be called D, but now it's called something else, and your E. So if you look at it, any address starting from all the way to 126.255.255.255. That is called which range? That's called a class A range. Questions? When I hear the thundering silence on the link, that's when I pause and say questions.
Mm.
Are you understanding that section there?
No, why it is 126?
Because somebody who made TCP/IP said so. Frankly, that is the answer
Okay, it's a
actually.
format.
No, it is that. See, if you look at it, we started our IP address from 0.0.0.0, right?
Yeah,
What would be the next possible address?
0.0.0.1.
Dot.
Exactly. 2, 3, all the way once until you reach 255, right? Then what happens?
Yeah,
Yes.
If you want to go to the
Uh,
next one, then you have 0.0.1.0,
yes.
and then 1, 2, 3 until you reach 255.
yeah,
Then
Yes.
you have 0.0.2.0 and then 1, 2,
Yes.
3 until you
yeah.
reach
Yes.
126 to 255, 255, 255, right?
Mhm.
So all the
Yes.
IP addresses between these, all the zeros and this, they are considered to be
Classic.
class A addresses,
Okay.
right? What do we have next? There's going to be a small gap here, which we'll talk about a little later. Starting from 128.0, pen is really bugging me today, boss. .0.0.0 all the way to 191.255.255.255 is called the
Class B.
class B address. So now this is a matter of remembering these sections, right? You need to be able to quickly identify which class address belongs to. The easiest part is looking at only the first octet. If it's between 0 and 126, class A, done. Right? If it's between 128 and 191, class B. And then you have the, what is the next IP address after this 191?
192.
Yeah, dot,
0.0.0.1.
no, 0 dot 0
I'm
dot
sorry,
0,
it's zero.
right?
Yes, zero.
2, 223 dot 255 dot 255 dot 255. And that is called
Last C.
See.
the class C address, right?
Okay.
Then
Yeah.
what is next? We had 223 dot 255 dot 255 dot 255 as the tail end of your class server. See? So what is next?
224.
Yeah? 2
Yeah.
224.
239 dot 255 dot 255 dot 255. Now this
Yeah.
used to be originally called the class D. It is still called class D, but a newer name for that would be the multicast
Okay.
range. We'll talk about unicast, multicast, and broadcast and anycast over the sessions. A whole bunch of them there. But right now we're just talking about the classes, right?
Yeah.
So class D is also called the multicast range. Then we have the 240.0.0.0 to the end of the line
Yes.
called a class E, right? Which is mostly used for documentation and experimentation. Which means normally you and me, we wouldn't be using this range.
Okay.
All right. So clear on the class A, B, C, D, and E ranges.
Yes.
All right. What class?
Class B. C. Class
Class
C.
C.
C. Because class C starts from
Expanded.
192.0.0,
192.
right? All
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
How about that?
Class A.
All right.
Class B.
B.
So it's basically easy to identify, right? All you have to
Yes.
Yes.
remember is the start and end of each class range. And
Yes.
you only have to worry about the first octet. You're not really concerned with these. As long as you look at the first section, that should be good enough for you to understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. What say we take a 5 minute break, guys?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about you people, but I've been doing most of the talking now. All right, 5 minutes, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
repeat,
sir.
guys. What? Yeah,
Yes.
we are on. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's get that. So we have our classes starting from. I put that in a little more clearer there. Right. That's the whole thing in
Yes.
one stream, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you think that was it, not really. Now, each of these classes have got what? There's a difference. IP addresses are divided into two more sections. One is public IPs and private IPs, right? What does that mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
public mean like you can use it throughout the world.
mhm.
Private, it's like local.
In a way, yes, yes. Now, you know about these radio frequencies, right?
Hmm.
Yes.
Out there, you have your police bands. It's illegal for anybody else to use them, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I know people use them, but kind of illegal for others to listen in on the police band or of course, the military band.
No.
Army's frequencies, you better not listen in on them, right?
Yes.
So there are certain radio frequencies which are have to be reserved and can only be allocated by the concerned authority. But on the other hand, you're all using some sort of a wireless access point at home, Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
Hmm.
those anybody can
Yes.
use, right?
Yes.
There's a particular band reserved frequency which anybody can use. Now this is simple.
Yes.
Public IP addresses means they are you have to be unique in the world and they have to be assigned to you. You cannot just use any number, right? Now, private arrangements in that particular range, anybody can use it within their network. There's no restriction. So, out of each of these classes, your class A, B, and C. Now, again, for addressing purpose, we only use class A, B, and C because these are
See.
used for different purposes. So, when you look at a machine on your local area network or on the internet, you'll find that the addresses come from one of these ranges,
Yes.
because the other two are used for different purposes, which we'll come to in different classes. Now, each of these ranges have got a reserved range which is considered to be private. Now, in class A, we're talking about the 10.0.0.0 to the 10.255, 255, 255. This range is considered to be the class A private range.
Right.
In class B, it is 172.16.0.0 to the 172.31.255.255 range. And in class C, it is 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255. 255, 255 range.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the Class A private range, how many IP addresses do you think that is? So it would start from 10.0.0.0, 10.0.0.1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10.255.255.255. How many IP addresses do you think that is?
255.
Is it? Because if we look at it, the last 3 octets are used. Anything in between that. Only the first octet is the same, right?
Yeah.
10.
So that means basically 2 raised to 24, isn't it? Or look at it this way. So you have your 10.0.0.0 to your 10.255.255.255. Which means if you look at this octet, how many IP addresses can you use? Starting from 0 to 255?
Yes.
255.
Now
256.
256, because remember in the outside world, we start counting from 1, 2, 3, right? In the IP address subnetting world, we always start counting from 0, 1, 2, 3. So 0 to 255 is actually,
256.
and in this section again, how many IP addresses?
The same.
256.
And here, another 256.
256.
Here, of course, there
Yeah.
is nothing, right?
Yeah.
So how many is this? 256 into 256 into 256? Or rather,
Yes.
2 raised to 24? Because that is 8 bits, 8 bits, 8 bits, right? So that should
Yes.
actually give you something like 16 million IP addresses, right? So in Class A, there are about 16 million addresses which you can use as you want. Nobody's going to question you. Likewise, in your Class B, how many would that be? Let's take it out to the next page. You have 172.16.0.0 to 172.31, right?
Yes.
So if you look at this sections, how many do you have? 256 and 256?
Mm-hmm.
2.
And here what do you have? Roughly 16?
Yes.
If you start counting from 16, remember 16 is inclusive. You don't count from 17. So 16, 17, 18, and all the way to 31 is 16. So basically, that's what you're looking at. Is actually, if you look at it, 65,536 into 65,536 into 16. So that many IP addresses you have as your private range. How about Class C?
Hmm, 168.0.0.
So that would be basically 256 into
256,
256.
which is raised to 16.
I don't know. What is 256 into 256? Possibly what? No, I was wrong here. This is 16 into 65,000. So this should be actually,
65,500.
it is 65,536. So if you look at it, this is a total of 65,536 addresses which can be considered as private, right? And here you have 16 into that many. And here you have 16 million. Now,
Yes.
What is this private and public range all about? I mean, who decides? So if you look at it, all IP addresses belong to an organization called ICANN, right? I think it stands for Internet Company for Assigned Names and Numbers or something. So basically, all IP addresses are supposed to belong to this authority here. They have in turn given it to IANA. I'm sure you heard of IANA, the Internet Assigned Names Authority or Agency or something. Now, IANA is in charge of distributing IP addresses because see, we keep saying that every device on the internet has to have a unique IP address.
Yes.
Now, there has to be some mechanism in place to make sure that you out there in the US and me out here in India, we don't use the same address.
Yes.
Somebody has to make sure of that, right? So that is the job of IANA basically. Now, ICANN owns everything. They have given it to IANA for distribution. So let's say IANA holds this whole range of IP addresses, the full range, right? So out of this 4.29 billion minus the class D and E, let's say roughly around 3.6 billion IP addresses are there, which is this whole block which IANA is holding. Now, how does IANA make sure that nobody is going to duplicate this? I mean, who gives you your IP address? You and me. How do we get our IP addresses? Are you holding a public IP now? Are you holding a unique
Yes.
IP now?
Yes.
Who has given that to you?
Router.
No. Who gave it to the router?
Yeah, that's IANA.
IANA is a little more up the chain. Who gave it to you? How did you get on the internet?
From the internet provider.
Exactly. Your
ISP.
ISP. Your ISP. Right? So let's say out in India, who is the major ISP? We have, let's say, BSNL.
BSNL.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So now BSNL goes to IANA and say, listen here, we are India's national service provider. We are the big dog in the pool and all that stuff. We provide internet services to India. We want a range of IP addresses. So IANA says, no problem. You pay your money and do your paperwork, and they take a block off from this and say, okay, I'm giving this block to BSNL, right? And they assign that.
Yeah.
Yes.
For example, let's say they took the let's say 5.0.0.0 to 5.255.255.255 range, right? And they said, okay, I'm giving this to BSNL. So this block of IP address has been assigned, and BSNL gets the 5 range, right? Next, let's say, what is your service provider out there?
Mm,
Comcast.
It's
Comcast.
great.
Yes. I mean, come on, the ISPs are all over the place, so Comcast. Now Comcast goes to IR and says, "Oh, we are pretty big ISP out here. We will have our own set of customers, so we want to do such and such." INA says, "Fine, guys, no
Okay.
problem. You get the 6 range." So that has gone to Comcast here, right? And out in China, whichever you know ISP unpronounceable name they have, they go up to INA
mm,
and say, "We are let's write some Chinese characters in there." That does look Chinese to me. I don't know what it looks like to you. Um, they go up there and say, INA says, "Fine, there's another block here for the Chinese guys, and here is the 7.0.0 range." So far, do you see any duplication? Any
No.
chance of anybody duplicating it?
No.
No.
No. Now, coming down, we might have smaller ISPs in India. I mean,
Oh.
you have your larger ones like your Reliance and Airtels and Vodafones and all those guys, but you also have local ISPs. right? So let's say your Reliance. Nowadays, most of these people go directly to INF, but in the old days, they used to go to BSNL and say, listen here, we are providing some of these services here. We will pay you a fees. We want to get on the internet, so we need some addresses too. So what BSNL would do here is they will chop off a small block from this, right? And say, I am giving this to Reliance. Another XYZ player goes in, BSNL would chop off a small section from that and give it to them. So let's say this guy got the 5.1.0.0 range completely. And this guy was given the 5.2.0.0 range, ending in 255, of course.
Is this part of IANA?
Everything is part of IANA because they hold the original block. But they have assigned a certain section to BSNL, and BSNL from their section has given a small section down to the smaller players. So now, do you see any duplication possible here?
No.
Again, no. Now, once BSNL has assigned it to Reliance, they will not be using it or they will not be giving it to anybody else. That has been reserved for Reliance. Now, coming down from Reliance, that's you and me connecting to one of the service providers, right? Now, Reliance, when you
Yeah.
connect to the internet, when you have an internet connection and your broadband router or a lease line modem connects to the internet, they will give you a unique IP address. So that's your modem right there. He's given you 5.1.7.9. And when somebody else connected there, he was given the IP address 5.1.7.11, right? And when somebody connects
Yep.
to your XYZ, he's being given a 5.2.1.5. And maybe when somebody connects to Comcast, he's been given 6.5.7.9. So right up to you and me, the last line of the internet users, do you see any possibility of a duplication of IP address there?
No.
No.
So this is exactly how it's being done to make sure there's no duplication on the internet.
Are these ranges give the same amount of quality in terms of internet?
Well, quality has got nothing to do with the address. It's got everything to do with how much bandwidth you have coming into the country.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at it, when I started out connecting to the internet way back in 92 or 93, you know what speeds I used to get? I mean, what
I
speed do you have now?
25 meg.
You have 25 megs,
Wow.
right?
Right.
Roughly,
Yes.
roughly. Now I'm sitting on the same thing too, and mine is a 4G connection which I'm using. I'm actually using my phone as a hotspot to have the classes in the morning.
Okay.
But in the office, I've got a 100 MB connection,
Yes.
right? And back home in Cochin, I believe I have a 40 MB connection, I believe. Something like that, right? Now, that is what you guys are talking about. When I started out in 92 or 93, I used to have a dial-up connection. Have you ever heard of those?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, like modem through phone.
yes. You used to use your regular landline numbers, landline
Yeah.
cable. You connect it into the modem, and then you plug that modem into your computer, and so on and so forth. And I used to get an amazing 9.6 kilobits per second. Can you even imagine those speeds, guys? Obviously,
Right.
in those days, there was no World Wide Web, there was no graphical content, there was no streaming videos or pictures, only text stuff, no browsers in place. So yeah, for text stuff, this was. But to download a 1 MB file, you would start the download. You would not only be able to go and have a cup of coffee, you would probably be able to make the cup of coffee and have some breakfast along with that. And then you come back, probably you would have a half an MB downloaded by that time,
Yes.
right? So IP address has got nothing to do with the speed. So in those days, India had only one or two major IPLs or the international links coming in. But nowadays, that is not the case. I mean, we are sitting on literally terabytes of incoming links into India, which is why in India now we are able to get these speeds, right? So the address itself does not have any significance on the speed. It is how much bandwidth you have.
Okay.
right? Or rather, how many links are coming into your country. So basically, India again is connected to the internet in two ways. One is through satellite links, and two is through undersea fiber cables. And the majority of the bandwidth coming into India is through undersea fiber cables. I mean, we have landing points in Cochin, we have it in Bombay, we have it in Chennai, Visakhapatnam, and I believe some ports of Gujarat. So a lot of cables coming in, fiber cables coming into India. So there is a lot of
Voice
bandwidth
is
available.
breaking.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody didn't like me talking about the bandwidth. Yeah. So just reminded me. Oh, remember where you come from. Bandwidth was not, and the cost. If you look at it, I mean, for my 100 Mbps link in the office, I'm paying roughly 5,000 rupees per month. Yeah, you got that number right?
Mhm.
Okay. And back in 2005, no, so 2002, when I was working for Satyam, have you heard of Satyam? Satyam Computers, SIFI
Yes.
used to be the first and the largest private ISP in
Yes.
India. Now, I used to head the technical department there for about 5 years, mostly based out of Maharashtra. We had this customer who wanted a pure 1 MB. You remember that size, right? 1 MB bandwidth. You know how much we charge them per year? Any numbers coming up? Remember, this is 15 years back,
I
and 1 MB
think
bandwidth. Can you
four
give me a number?
4,000 rupees.
That is
No, a
that is
lakh.
today. That is today. We actually charged that guy for a year,
Oh, for a year. Okay.
How much?
1.3 crores.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, and 1 MB bandwidth, guys, right?
Wow.
And today I'm getting 100 Mbps for 5,000 bucks. See where it's gone.
If that guy is still alive, he'll take his money back.
Yeah, but I'm sure from my 1.3 crores, he must have been making like 10 crores at least.
Yeah.
Because those guys at
Yes.
that point had a development center, I think, somewhere in New York. So he had to have high bandwidth available between his New York development office and his Indian office. Yeah, but that was a big number. So
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, it's come down a lot. I mean, my Geo connection is giving me a 4G connection roughly around 25 Mbps throughput, and I mean they're charging me 300 rupees per month, guys, and for 30 GB downloads.
Not bad.
Yeah, if you had told me that I would be doing downloads in GBs per day back in 2002, I would have probably got you committed. I mean, GB was something like the unicorn to us at that time. 1 GB, oh my god! I mean, obviously we did not have those big files in those days.
Yes.
But I still remember while at SIFI, you ever heard of the movie called Swordfish?
No.
It was a John Travolta movie, and it came out, and I wanted to see it immediately, so I got onto one of those torrent software, and I tried downloading it. The speeds were pathetic, so I kind of sneaked into the data center, plugged my laptop into the link coming in from the US, or was it from Singapore? I don't remember, and I downloaded my movie. Right, it was about 700 MB. It took me like 2 to 3 minutes to download that because I was plugged in right into the backbone link. And within the next 15-20 minutes, I think we received about 300 calls of people complaining about slow internet
Oh,
because I was sucking up the whole bandwidth allocated to, I think, Aurangabad or sorry, Nagpur region, I think. So for 5 minutes, there like people were just blinking at the screen because they were getting nothing because I was like soaking it all up. I did that a couple of times more, and then I stopped because I got caught. Okay. So again, this is how your the concerned authorities make sure that nobody duplicates address. Imagine the havoc that would have. I mean, if two of you have the same home address, right? And I'm trying to send a letter from here to you, what would happen? Probably get delivered to the
It,
wrong person, right?
yes.
Exactly like that. On the internet, we cannot afford to have anything having duplicate addresses, and this is how it's made. You make sure that there is no duplication in IP addresses. Nobody uses the same. I mean, no two people use the same address,
Yes.
right? Now, these are the public IP addresses. What is being assigned by IANA and your ISPs, and what you cannot have otherwise. These are the public ranges, right? Which means, which logically means what? These private ranges will not be assigned by them, right?
Yes.
Because they are supposed to be private. Now, as I told you, private can be used by anybody, because the reason for that private and public is that, as I told you, we are running out of IP addresses, right?
Yes.
Now, what if how many devices do you use to go onto the internet? I mean, as an individual, any of you? You probably have a PC at home.
Yes.
You probably use a laptop.
Yes. Laptop,
You
PC,
probably
smartphone.
exactly. You probably have a tablet or a smartphone. So I personally, I think I use 4 devices to go onto the internet. So that would
Yeah.
mean if every device needs a unique IP address and a public IP address, that would mean me as an individual is using 4 public IP addresses, right?
Yes.
Yes.
What about
Yes.
a company which has got about 1,000 employees in their building? How many IP addresses would they need?
1,000.
1,000 IP addresses. Do you think though there are, even though we have about 3.6 billion IP addresses, do you think we have that many IP addresses to go around? We really don't.
No.
Uh,
Which is why some mechanism had to happen where you could actually use one public IP addresses and all the devices within your organization needs to go out that way. It's something like sharing an apartment, guys. I mean, it's like 1,000 people coming into Bangalore every day, and we only have 500 apartments. So either half of them sleep on the street, or two of them share an apartment, right?
yes.
Similar. Since we don't have that many IP addresses to go around, we have found methods to use one IP address to hide behind, and 100 machines going out using that IP address, sharing an IP addresses. Now, this is where your public and private ranges get used. Public is what happens to be assigned to you, and say, let's say I'm connecting to my ISP, he is giving me one public address, right? So that my router can go on the internet. All right.
Yes.
And but inside my network, I have 100 PCs. How do they go out?
Uh, with the private IP.
Exactly. So I give private IP addresses to my machines inside, and then I find a way to kind of do a translation sort of thing, which is about a 6th chapter in this thing, what we call network address translation. So basically, let me, before we wind up, let me give you a quick understanding of that part of it. Even though it
Okay.
is not really needed now, I don't want to leave you confused about that. Let's say I am company A, right? And I've got, let's say, 10 PCs. I'm only going to draw 5 because I'm lazy. And we have company B. Again, they have 100 machines. And if you expect me to draw 100, you really don't know me, right? So both these companies need to go on the internet, right?
Okay.
But if you keep in mind the fact that every device needs an IP address, these guys are going to need 10 IPs and these guys are going to need 100 IPs, right?
Yes.
Not going to happen. What we could do here is, and this is the internet. So these
Okay.
people have a router here and they're connecting to the internet. These people are having an outcome. And obviously they are connecting to some ISP or the other, right?
Yeah.
All right. So now this ISP, based on what we discussed in the last stream, he is going to assign an IP, let's say the 205.10.5.6, and this ISP is going to give, let's say, 195.15.0.7 unique public addresses, right?
Yes.
If you look at the IP address itself, can you identify the class and whether it is private or public?
No.
Yes.
Yes, you
Yes.
can.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can.
Mhm.
Right? 205 and 195 both are class Cs.
Yes.
And the class C private range we know is the 192, 168 range, which means both these addresses are public addresses
Yes.
and they are unique based on the INR system.
Yes.
Now, inside our network, we are going to say, let's say, 192.168.0.0 network. And this machine gets 0.1, he gets 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5. That's the 192.168, 0.1, 0.2, all of that, right?
Yes.
And of course, there's going to be some sort of a switch device which is connecting these guys together, and they're connected that. So that's how they go. And in this company, I am using 192.168.0.0, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is this possible, or are we facing a
Yes.
duplication here?
No.
It looks like duplication
Actually,
to
it's
me.
not duplicate
It's a unique because the
because
router
the
it.
public IP is unique.
Exactly.
That's the main.
Yeah.
Because within my network, whatever I use, when one of these computers try to come onto the internet, that packet which comes out here, this internal IP address is replaced with this address. So when it is coming out on the common ground to play, they're coming out with this unique IP. So regardless of what you use inside your company, when the packet comes out to the common network, that is when you cannot have duplication. Inside your company, who cares, right?
Yes.
When you
Yeah.
connect to the network, common network, that is when duplication should not happen. So this method of translating at this point, changing this to that is called NAT, or network address translation. Now NAT is one of the 2 or 3 reasons that you and me have internet access today. If this was not the case, internet would be reserved only for government agencies and research agencies. The common man would
Yes.
have no access to the internet. But today, yeah, we have it because NAT came up through in the 90s, and yeah, we survived.
Okay.
Now, do you understand why private and public ranges are there?
Mhm.
Yes.
Private because anybody can have 1,000 machines and use a private range inside their network, inside their building, inside their office. But the moment they connect to a public network, they have to have at least one public unique IP. And that is going to be assigned by the ISP to make sure there is no duplication. Questions? I think we are at,
Mm,
yeah, we are at 8. Time to wind up. Any questions so far, guys?
no.
Anybody?
No.
Hmm.
Mm.
When the class does not have questions, they can possibly mean two things, either that it's all crystal clear, everybody's understood everything, or we have absolutely no clue as to what is happening. So I hope it is the former one.
Yes.
You mean yes, as in yes, it is the former one, or
One.
as in I hope so, kind of thing. All right, guys, let's wind it
Sir,
up. Yes,
in company B, the address is 195.15
sorry.
dot 0.7.
Um,
In company B, the IP address is 195.15.0.7. How can I figure out it's a private one and class it
You're talking about this IP
public
address
one?
here. Are we talking about this IP address here?
Yeah.
Now,
Yes.
remember in class C, what is the private range? 192, 168. See, if you look at the entire class C, we have 192.0.0.0 through 223.255.255, right? That's the entire class C
Yes.
range.
Yeah.
Okay. Now within that class range, we have the 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. That is the private reserved range within class C.
Yes.
Anything that is not part of, is part of the 192.2 to 3 and is not part of this one is considered to be a public. So if you look at this address here, that is the 195, right?
Yeah.
So is it part of this little section here, or is it part of the bigger section?
Yeah. Little. Okay.
The bigger one, which means that is a public one.
Class C. Okay.
Class C public, because class C private is 192.168.
Yes.
So we know it is class C because it has a 195 octave restricted, but it does not belong to the private range of 192. So we know that is a public address there.
Okay.
That's what we're looking at here.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
195 is part of class C, but is not part of this subsection. So if it was, so anything that is not private within a range is public.
Yeah. All right. Got it.
Yeah. So I'll have the videos uploaded in the next couple of hours, right? So I guess when you wake up in the morning, it will be there,
Okay.
right? And either day after or the day after that, we will have to have one session in the morning for you guys, right? Because once we get through with
Okay.
this part, then we will start on the device access, where I need to show you a router and a switch and all the physical devices itself.
Okay.
All right. So we'll schedule that either tomorrow or day after that. I mean, it's not going to be tomorrow. We will plan it tomorrow then, as to which day you need to come in the evening rather in the morning.
Oh,
My evening, your
Okay.
morning.
yes.
Right?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. You guys have a great evening or night or whatever it is.
Have a good day.
Thanks,
Have a good day,
guys.
sir.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.